So, good evening. Thank you for joining us. It is great to virtually see all of you. And thank you for joining us for our hopefully first of many workshops. As the title says, we will be discussing collaboration and inclusion. What that means, the integration of both within the local art scene and several other things within that category that we will go over throughout the next hour and a half. At some point during the evening, we will all get together to bounce off ideas, but until that point, the chat is open for everyone to communicate. If they have any questions or ideas, we are keeping an eye out, so feel free to do that. I'm already rambling, so I don't want to do that for too long, and we will seamlessly and very smoothly move on to introductions. My name is Fatima, and I am into stuff in general, and some of that stuff includes the stuff we'll be looking at today. I will be the voice between one speaker and another, reminding you that despite the fact that time doesn't exist, we are still bound by it. So our four main speakers are illustrator and designer Zac Ricci, marketing guru and entrepreneur Sarah Woods, activist and lecturer Maria Pisani, and architect and curator Elyse Tonna. There is much more to all of them, but I'll allow them to introduce themselves. But before we do that, let me just pass the hypothetical microphone to Maria Galia, who is the founder of ARTZ and a proponent of collaborative spaces herself.
Okay. Hi everyone, thank you again for joining. We should be 15 today, if I'm not mistaken. This is one of our first workshops, hopefully many to come. We want to start with this particular subject because I think it's an issue which we face on a daily basis, and it is also one of the primary reasons why we founded ARTZ. We wanted to create this collaborative space and a space where you feel included rather than an exclusive space within the art. Many of you know that navigating the art world can be sometimes, you can find different barriers across the way. And what is really important for me, and I think should be given more importance for the art community in general, is that we take examples from other sectors, other businesses or other organizations which don't form part within the arts, but apply the same mindset and the same collaborative approach to whatever we're doing. I would like you to keep an open mind, both if you're an artist, if you're an art professional, if you're new to the scene. Just what we really want to give you today is that energy and that hope and a new perspective on how you can create, collaborate, and also we're going to be questioning some things which are at present in the industry in general. So I will leave it up to our speakers. We selected them on purpose. They come from different backgrounds, but all amazing people who are doing amazing stuff. So I'll leave it up to them and Fatima to guide you. And I hope you take something out of this. Thank you.
So we're going to start off with our virtual circle time. I'm literally just going to go chronologically from left to right with our main speakers. So who are you, what do you do, and what is your goal? Where do you fit within collaboration and inclusion? So the first on my screen is Sarah. So Sarah Woods, you can go ahead, please start us off.
Hi. So firstly, I'd like to thank Fatima and Maria for having me. I've met Maria actually through one of our events, and I'm really loving what you're doing with ARTZ. So well done on that. Who am I? So my name is Sass. I run a community for women in business. Our community actually champions collaboration over competition. So we're very big on collaboration and on inclusivity in a way. The idea is to bring women from various industries together to learn from one another and to support each other. We've recently launched an online membership program, which sees entrepreneurs and freelancers getting together, and we offer a variety of events such as online workshops, virtual networking, discussion clubs, inspirational talks, and also Ask an Expert sessions. And through these events, we seek to support and to share knowledge so that together we can grow, which is ultimately the essence of collaboration.
That's amazing. Thank you for that. So I'm just going to move over to Elise.
Hello. Thank you, Fatima. Thank you, Maria, for doing this, and thank you especially to Maria for, I remember the very start of ARTZ. It's come a long way. Well, I'm Elise. I mostly work in the artistic scene, the visual arts sector. I'm also a colleague of Maria and Maya in the visual arts subcommittee. Where do I come into this? Well, most of my projects mainly revolve around community. Right now I'm doing a major community art project, socially engaged, context-driven project called Fuse. Fatima is a part of it. She's one of the artists as well. We're very much interconnected. I also help out at the Gabriel Corona Foundation, where community inclusion, collaboration is obviously key to everything we do. We try to work with different people, whatever their background, whoever they are. I think that's basically it. I'm generally going to keep it short, otherwise I'll keep on going and might as well discuss more important things.
Thank you for that very brief introduction, Elise. We appreciate it. So Maria, you're next.
So good evening, everybody, and thank you, Fatima and Maria, for inviting me. I always get excited in events like this because it's not my normal space, and I guess the excitement comes from my absolute belief in the need, not just the fun of, but the need to form alliances and work together. So I'm Maria. I'm a youth and community worker by profession. I'm an academic, and for the last 17 years have been quite active, been defined as an activist really, on issues related to forced migration, asylum and racism issues in Malta. I founded Integra Foundation in 2004, and we've been pretty active in the field working towards inclusion and social justice. I think I'll stop there as well to create more space for the discussion.
Thank you for that. So Zac, go ahead.
Hello everyone, how's everyone doing? Guys, thank you very much for having me. Maria, we've come a long way. I mean, we've met. I mean, I can't even say like how grateful I am for you. I mean, I feel like you're a part of my journey. You've helped me. For those of you who don't know, it was Maria who hosted my first solo exhibition, and she really helped me out. And she taught me like the power of collaboration, as in it started from there. So I'm Zac Ricci. I am a commercial designer and illustrator. what I do is I help brands and people tell their story. And aside from that, I pretty much really enjoy being curious and exploring narratives through a cartoon character.
Superb. So, okay, I don't want to delve into your introductions because I have so much to say, but we are tight on time. But I'm really excited. You're all amazing people. And yeah, so it's impossible to have a discussion without first defining the terms. So we can easily look up what inclusion and collaboration means, but I really would love to hear it from you. So what do you look for specifically, and what is inclusion and collaboration for you? So whoever wants to go first, I don't want to be a dictator. So anyone who wants to go first, please go ahead. So no one's taking it up. So Zac, can you go ahead, please?
I'm gonna try my best because I don't know about you guys, but it was a bit choppy for me. Is it just me who's, as in like I'm getting it a bit choppy? Did you, Fatima, did you ask what collaboration is? You mind repeating the question?
So not at all. Apologies for the choppy connection.
No problem.
So I just wanted to know what inclusion and collaboration means specifically to every individual on the panel, and I decided to start off with you. So sorry to put you on the spot, but
no problem.
Start it off. Thank you.
Collaboration and inclusion. I would say, since we're, social creatures, it's in our nature to kind of connect with one another. Maybe before we did it in different ways, and now we're reaching a hand in creativity and trying to make things together. To me, collaboration is, at least, I love diversity, so I would see a creative who I would admire for what they do, because the beauty in creativity is everyone specializes in different things. And I would say, like, wouldn't it be cool, like, if we do something together and I'd approach that person, I'd see what they're enthusiastic about, what they're interested about, and I'd want them to be interested about that, because there needs to be a kind of drive. And I'd also want the same, like, listen, I'm interested in this, you're interested in this, what if we put these two things together? And that way we're a bit driven. But I'd like to hear what you girls think.
Absolutely, yes, I agree with Zac. And I would also say that inclusion for me means a safe space, creating a safe and authentic space where everyone feels included and valued. And this is what I try and achieve through my community. A place where people can share without judgment. I think that's really important. And as Zac said, to share skill sets, because yes, we are very unique, and we can't be good at everything. And some people are better at some things, and why not join forces and grow together? So that's exactly what we do achieve, sharing knowledge to lift everyone up. And for me, that's what it means.
Anyone else want to add anything to that?
I can. Everything everyone said, first of all. I would say I always question the term inclusion at the same time, because I'm always thinking, well, included into what? And that sometimes can imply a border as well. So when I conceptualize inclusion, I think it necessarily requires a conceptualization of borders as well. Whenever I think of creativity, I think of Borderlands and the work of Gloria Ann Zaldúa. The space of Borderlands as a messy and creative space, which is important to create safe spaces. I agree with you, Sarah, but I think it's also important to embrace discomfort as well, because discomfort can be a very challenging space and can also be a creative opportunity to actually really think beyond the borders. In terms of collaboration, I mean, in my own work as an activist, there is absolutely no denying, I think, the arts can convey a message and provoke conversation in a way sometimes that I think political activism and even academia can't. So it's so necessary to collaborate. But then also when I think about collaboration today in the middle of this global pandemic, well, if it's taught us anything, I think that it is that we are enmeshed in complex relationships. We are codependent, and the only way of really flourishing as a species, but also as a species sharing this space with other species, we need to collaborate and not dominate, but work together. So for me today, I think collaboration has taken on a new meaning as well.
Thank you for that. That's really good insight, all of you. For those of you working collaboratively, specifically doing collaborative projects, did it arise from a certain need? Did you notice a lack and therefore your work ethic kind of resulted from that?
Could you repeat the question? As in, is there a lack of collaboration here in Malta?
I mean, that question we can get to later, but specifically working with collaborative projects, did it arise out of a certain need? Did you notice a lack? Why did you specifically decide to start working collaboratively?
Would anyone like to start with this question?
For me, it's a bit different. I have worked collaboratively in the past. Has it resulted from a need? Yes. Also from a level of like-mindedness as well, I think. Like if you are on the same wavelength as someone, and if you have similar goals, you know, but perhaps you don't have the strength, I don't know, to achieve it on your own, then you sort of join forces to achieve it together, I would say. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
From my end, on an individual level, on a personal level, I hate working alone. So collaborating is generally something I really I'm after, like I seek it. On an organizational level, both with the foundation and also with ACT, collaboration is something that is also required, because different people and different other organizations have insight and they are knowledgeable on different things. So when you actually collaborate and come together, it develops into something more fruitful. It's something more beautiful sometimes. I think even in terms of projects, like even working with communities and working with different people, especially when they are non-art, from a non-art background, it's even interesting to see how like the different perspectives and encounters that art offers. So it's not necessarily like very linear. It's very, it comes from different people, and people have different perspectives. So it's quite beautiful to see kind of the interrelationships and different implications that one single art project, even one conversation, might actually have. So I think there are multiple layers to both the terms, and there are multiple layers as to why people collaborate.
Definitely. This is why that question was really important as well, because I think it is a response. It is a different response depending on the individual, but yeah, that's really good. So does anyone else want to add anything to this, or can we move on?
I mean, I'm adding for the sake of adding, but I would align myself with what Sarah said as well. It's a sort of a fusion of two things: recognizing the need, but also being surrounded by other people with the same interests and openness to working together. For sure, though, when you have different people coming together with different ideas, perspectives, and experiences, it creates something so much bigger than the whole, and that has been amazing.
If I might also add, guys, in two senses, that collaboration, at least how I can relate it to me, is it has also helped me to a sense where sometimes graphical work can be a bit, not mundane, but it's very corporate and a bit serious. And when it comes to collaboration, since it's like it's more of a fun project, and you can really reach out, and actually it really feeds your soul. It's something that keeps a creative alive. I think it's very, very important for creatives to kind of reach out and collaborate and just have fun. It's like going out and playing football together.
Yeah, that is really important. I think we kind of got used to thinking of ourselves as individuals. So it's really nice that we put this idea to connect and reconnect and communicate like on the platform it deserves. With that in mind, let's zoom out a bit. How inclusive is today's local scene in Malta? Have I gone choppy again? Can you hear me? So I said we're zooming out a bit and addressing the local scene. Are you all with me now? I can see a small nod, so I'm guessing that's a yes. Okay. How inclusive is today's local scene?
I was thinking about this question from the guidelines. Obviously, I'm not in the art scene, so I can't talk from that scenario. But what I would say is, when talking about women in business, because that's what I know, and diverse leadership, as a result of the pandemic, I think that businesses have been pushed to be more flexible. And I think that this has given a lot of rise for more inclusivity. So, for example, businesses have had to become more flexible in terms of remote working, being more flexible in times of delivery, etc. And as a working mother, for example, once homeschooling is out of the picture, right, and these methods are still retained, stuff like remote working or perhaps a hybrid version of, then the business world becomes so much more inclusive for moms, let's say. And also it's given rise to more empathetic style of leadership, which is usually a skill set that is attributed to female leadership more than male, right? And so as a result of the pandemic, we are seeing the value attributed to more diverse leadership. So in a way, I would say that the local scene has become more inclusive as a result of the pandemic. That's my little thought.
It's nice to see that a crisis has led us to be more empathetic, so at least silver linings.
We haven't had a choice, right? We've had to be, so.
Yeah. So, anyone else want to add anything to this?
Because sadly, I would say the opposite. Because of the nature of my work, not me personally, as a middle-aged white academic with my salary still coming in and my kids nicely grown up, life has been okay for the last year. But I think what the pandemic has really done has exposed the fractures that run deep within society that we knew were there, but the fractures run even deeper. And so if I was to look, I think intersectionality is really important here, in looking at how social class, level of education, intersects with race, importantly intersects with legal status and residence status, and gender. What we are seeing is more and more exclusion and violations of rights. I mean, I think we move beyond the terminology related to inclusion and exclusion now to issues that are far more serious. And it started almost immediately with a political statement that migrants who lose their jobs should leave now. And this was any migrant that was no longer deemed welcome, having invited them here in the first place. To asylum seekers being pushed back to Libya, which was a violation of international law, and 12 people died, to people being detained on the Captain Morgan vessels, an ongoing illegal detention policy, and everything justified on the grounds of protecting us, whoever that is, during a global pandemic. So no, sadly, I've seen the absolute opposite, and people really struggling on a day-to-day basis to survive, not to get an hour in to watch Netflix, but to actually survive.
That's a lot to digest. Do you think the worlds have become more divorced, so from the people in the margins as well as people who have the privilege to be able to do remote working?
The realities, the lived realities.
Yeah, how do you think they've just become even more inaccessible throughout?
I mean, for certain people in society, this has been devastating, across the board. I mean, this isn't just a migrant thing. There are also Maltese people who are really, really struggling. But when you break it down and you really start to recognize the toxicity of certain intersections, I mean, let me give another, because I hate to be the wet blanket. So let me look at other things that happened in the last year. Black Lives, I mean, I've been organizing protests for 17 years. And I've attended protests where we were literally 3 people or 10 people. So in the middle of the pandemic, Black Lives Matters was a protest that brought so many people from such diverse backgrounds together to take a stand on an issue like we've never seen before. So I'm not saying everything has been bad, not at all, but when you weigh it all up, unfortunately, there is more openness, there is more compassion. When the quarantine was declared on the open centres, we shared what was supposed to be a private post, saying to friends, saying, can you help us just to raise some money to get some food into the open centres. Somebody shared it publicly, and I had 5,000 euros transferred on my Revolut, on my personal Revolut. It was my personal Revolut that they were using to just try, and complete strangers, hundreds of people donating money with no questions asked, you know, so I don't want to say, oh, it's awful and everyone's a dick. Not at all. You know, I've seen amazing examples of compassion and coming together. But that doesn't take away from the reason why they had to do that. And that was in acknowledging the divisions within our society. And I'll link that to my first point, that what we're also seeing is, as long as people are struggling in this way, they become a part of the problem in terms of addressing the pandemic, and blamed for many of the struggles that we face as a collective today as well. Not everyone can stay at home. Some people have to go out in order to be able to put food on their table. Now I will stop.
Thank you for that. I have a lot to say to that, but again, time, and I do want to bring it back to the art scene. But thank you for the insight, and there is a lot of things that I would like to develop on, but that will be another workshop for another time. Thank you, Maria. Does anyone else want to say anything else about inclusivity in the current art scene in Malta?
I'll just add something very small. I mean, here in Malta, for creativity, I do sense a lot of competition between people. If you think about it, there aren't many people who are really collaborating. I mean, there are a few, but there aren't many people who are reaching out. If there are, there's just a handful. But I guess it's a bit of everything. That's how life is. There are the people who want to keep to themselves, and then there are the people who want to reach out. And sometimes I've noticed that reaching out to collaborate might seem a bit like a big question mark might pop up, like, why do you want to do this? Or they might see something like there's something behind it. I'm just throwing some things out there. In the creative industry, I think there is a bit too much of, I might be wrong, I might be putting myself on the spot at the moment, but behind sometimes art, there might be a bit of ego, I would say. So it might be very hard for people to like reach out. No, I don't want to do work with this person. This person doesn't stand for what I stand for. The easiest thing to collaborate, at least from what has happened to me, is I like collaborating with people who are completely different, who have something unique about them. And that way it's like fun. I mean, but I don't know, at the end of the day, this is just my perspective of things that I've come across, and I might be seeing things completely differently. Hopefully it changes for the better. I mean, Gaber Foundation, as in, they've done a great thing. They've reached out and collaborated. Elyse, I mean, can mention this, as in. Anyway, that's my 2 cents, guys. Sorry.
I have so much to say, I cannot even focus on what to say. Thank you, Zac. Yes, we did actually. I mean, in general, we try and collaborate in everything we do. Zac was part of the Many Faces of the Mill when last year we had to celebrate, we were meant to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Cable Caravana setting up the mill as a cultural center. Obviously, I was planning to close the road, I was planning projections on the mill, but obviously nothing happened. So what we did was like, okay, if we're actually going to try and create something, let's create something where it's beneficial, it's of mutual benefit to the artists who are participating, and also kind of a fundraising for the mill and for the foundation. So we like created a call for illustrators to actually interpret the many faces of the mill. With regards to how fragmented the creative industries are, yes, I still believe that, back to a conversation I also had with Maria like 2 years or 3 years ago, I think. I still believe that the creative industries are fragmented, and like tying in points which both Maria and Sals mentioned, I think struggle was also something that brought us together up to a certain point. We still do not know what the situation will be like once the pandemic is over. That is still a big mystery to me, because, for example, the lack of planning between different exhibitions. You have 5 different exhibitions launching on one day, and all the people have to be in different places at once, when it could be something that people plan, or like there is collaborative efforts at least between the organizing entities. Most often they are institutions. With regards to collaboration between artists, Zac, you mentioned a very important point, and you mentioned the artists' egos, which, yes, is unfortunately something we have to face on a daily basis. I mean, myself as a curator, I need to face these egos multiple times, but it's only when you actually work closely to an artist that they realize that their ego, and you try to facilitate encounters, that these egos suddenly break down. I'm currently experiencing this in like depth with Fuse, because there are a mixture of artists, like the profiles are quite different. So we have mid-career artists who are exhibiting for the first time. And the fact that I've practically put them in one place and they're actually helping out each other, and there are deadlines to meet. Plus, we have to work around the limitations of the pandemic. I think it's quite something seeing enough a mid-career artist helping out an emerging artist, and it all becomes kind of this, not to be so romantic about it, but very much like a happy family. And that's currently my that's currently my feeling. So I hope it remains like this literally for the next month or so, but we'll see. I mean, so far so good.
I think you mentioned ego. I think we have to break through the mentality that by helping someone else, you are taking away or you are forfeiting your own success, right? I think a lot of the times in Malta, we see it that way. But on the contrary, I think the more you help people, the better the experience for both. And people won't forget that, you know, once you help someone, they'll be forever indebted to you. And I'm sure that they will return the favor, you know, at some other point in time. But I think giving without the intention of receiving, there's something to be said for that as well. So I think that's a big one, you know, breaking through that mentality of, oh, because I helped this person, then I'm not going to be successful. I think that's a big one for the local market.
Do you think it's cultural? Like, yeah, where does that come from? Is it just individual or is it en masse?
I don't know. I mean, this is now my own personal opinion. I have no idea, but you know, maybe it's because we come from a little island, and you know, there isn't much. I don't know. There isn't like a huge market, you know. So you think, I don't know, my audience is going to be the same as your audience because there isn't enough to go around. I think there's that type of mentality. But I think there is space for everyone, I would say, and we are all unique and different, and there is room for everyone to succeed. I don't know where it comes from. Does anyone have an idea?
I think it might actually be, it might be a factor of a lot of things: culture, beliefs, where they were brought up, what their parents were like. There's a lot to do with all these things. But I really think there should be someone or a platform like ARTZ that should cultivate this and make it the norm. Like collaboration is part of culture. Even if you think about it, the shortest thing between two people is a story. And we're doing it on a daily basis. Some people do it in drama, some people do it in inspiring people, but we should be doing more of these things. We should be making it the norm, as in sharing and collaborating and talking about these things.
Totally.
At the moment, everyone's just a giver. Sorry, you were saying so?
No, I think it's all about human connection. Again, it all boils down to that, you know, fostering human connection. And I think that's what community does, right? I mean, we're all as different as we all are, you know, we're all on different parts, but in essence, our journeys are very similar. So by being transparent with one another and by, you know, forming those relationships, I think that's so powerful.
And in relation to what you said, Zac, about narratives and stories, I think stories are what humanize as well. In our own work, when we've worked on more artistic projects, they've been very much focused on stories and sharing stories. I recall one project, Huara or Fury, Herbs and Flowers it was. And another one was Sterum Filher Scented Stories, where migrants and Maltese would sit together and recount stories of flowers and herbs. And it was so beautiful because the stories that they shared that were also then developed into artistic creative pieces were incredibly rich. And I think much more powerful than much of the work we do as political activists, much more powerful. There were tears of joy, there were tears of laughter, people hugging each other. It was I cannot understate how powerful these projects can be.
That sounds amazing.
It was amazing. It was beautiful. Let me give you one example of a woman, a Somali woman, speaking about her bougainvillea. You know the flower, the bougainvillea, which we have a lot of in Malta. And she was talking about her bougainvillea that she had in her garden in Somalia. And before she had to flee Somalia, she buried her husband under the bougainvillea. And another Maltese woman was speaking about her bougainvillea in her own garden, and they were able to share this story. But then a young Somali said he couldn't remember flowers in Somalia because he grew up in war. And we didn't know whether that meant there were no flowers or because of the war, he didn't see the flowers. But so just one example of how one story about a flower, just one story, and there were many stories, can bring different people together. And it was the same with scents and smells, and how these stories transcend borders, physical and non-physical.
Amazing, amazing.
That is really beautiful. I guess ultimately it just boils down to understanding what makes us human and using that over and over again. So, with all these things in mind, just saw that Charlene has updated everyone on the chat that she's had to leave because her bus has arrived. So, keeping this fragmentation in mind, how do we breach the gap between one individual and another? We've already outlined stories, but in the case there is an absence of stories, how do we breach the gap between one individual and another? And then with that, how do we breach the gap between individual and community? There are some thinking faces, so I'm going to give you some time, and then whoever wants to chime in, feel free.
You can shorten the question.
Sorry, my questions are always so loaded. There's always like at least 8 in one. Elise knows this about me. I'm sorry. So,
It's cool.
between one individual and another. Let's start from there, and then we can build up. Does that work?
You mind saying it again because it chopped up? Sorry.
How do we breach the gap between one individual and another, particularly in the arts? So since there's a lot of competition or ego, how can we go about breaching the gap?
Okay, one thing I can suggest, like we had mentioned, story. Another really, really important thing is, if we look back at when we were children, we loved stories. But what did we also love? We also loved games. And why are games so important? I can tell you this. If one of us, maybe who have never met before, had to play a game, after that game, we form a bond. And after that, we can trust each other a bit more. Because a game is all about trust. So games could be another thing, because games are engagement. You're creating a connection. So I would say one of those two. I mean, I'd love to hear what Sarah thinks, what Elise thinks, and Maria, and also you, Fatima.
I think trust is a big one. I think you're right there. How do we begin to trust someone? I don't know. It's a small, it's an accumulation of little actions, right? I don't know, conversing with each other, showing up for one another. I don't know. But by being in a community, I think these things come naturally, you know, because you're constantly sharing a space with people, and so you're constantly discussing things. You're constantly comparing notes, and through conversations, I think you then establish an element of trust, and that's what closes the gap, I would say.
So add on to this, I don't think it necessarily needs to be a shared space. Yes, it obviously really helps, but I think it's all about showing someone, if it's between an individual and an individual, showing someone that you're ready to listen, that you're ready to understand, and taking it from there, building it step by step. Like Fatima was experienced this when we were like during the research phase of Fuse. I was basically plunked in a community which I knew absolutely nothing about, and I had no idea like who the people were, what the place meant to these people, like how it developed, what its history was, whatever, so on and so forth. Nearly 2 years from then, even though the relationships, like the very solid relationships, are few, so perhaps they are between 10 and 15. I think those 10 and 15 were built because like even each conversation was guided with how are you today, like what like literally latching on from one interest of this person, whatever it was, whether it was carnival, whether it was bread, whether it was literally random encounters in the street. And the space was not necessarily the same. One time we met, the physical space, the context was not necessarily the same. So one time we met over here, the other time we met there, the other time it was a coincidence. So the relationship was like built really gradually, and yes, ultimately it was all about trust. It was kind of this trust relationship I built, and then they trusted me, so they trusted the artists because I was seen with them as well. So it takes time, it takes a lot of understanding, it takes a lot of listening. But step by step, I think even based between artist and artist or whoever it might be, I think that is something we lack. We lack this kind of space where we can actually share the issues we encounter or the difficulties we encounter or our even like accomplishments. And that's why there are so strong relationships between a few, but they're weaker with others, because there is no space which, like Seth was saying, which facilitates these encounters, and something which perhaps ARTZ and whatever, I mean, even effort from everyone's end, that it takes efforts to like be interested in what people are doing and saying, and being a supporter of like whatever people do, even though you might not be a fan of someone's work, but at least you support because you know that someone is putting effort in what they're doing. So yes, I can go on and on. So I'll stop here.
That's a really great point. That's a really great point. Because it's like if you want to create connection, there might be someone, not everyone is willing to, it's a give and take, eh? So hearing makes a person feel important, they feel valued, and then they listen to you, and then it keeps on passing on. That's great.
I don't know if this makes sense, but I just had a thought, like with inclusion, I think it's also a bit of the individual's responsibility, you know, to be included. You have to consistently show up or put yourself out there. Does that make sense? You can't expect to be included without providing some sort of value or some sort of effort, like Elise was saying, right? You have to show that you're interested. You have to show that you want to create connection. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
I can't speak from the artistic perspective, but for sure, whenever we've worked with other organizations, the development of a concept together is the biggest hurdle. But generally, once that's done, that's where you have a successful collaboration. If you sort of go into a project with parallel expectations, sort of individual expectations, then I think it's doomed to fail. But when you develop an idea together, which can be an uncomfortable process, but also enriching, I think that is where people really can that creates the possibility, I think, to work together, but always within an environment that, when we spoke about the culture, when you mentioned the culture earlier on, I mean, a culture that ultimately is grounded in competition. I mean, we are taught to be competitive from day one, not to be collaborative. And I think we need to keep this in mind as well. Our dominant model, which is the economic model, is based on competition and not on collaboration and sharing.
So with that in mind, how can organizations and institutions create the climate where that collaboration can happen?
Well, I think it's to let go of the hierarchical structures, right? And to bring it to a flatter level. So a level where an organization is more, you know, where it values each employee and listens and engages with everyone, and people feel part of the process of the decision making, I guess.
I guess I would also say use a concept like win-win. For example, you're going to benefit and I will also benefit. We'll also benefit each other. A good example is, for example, like Elyse, for example, in the collaboration of the 30th anniversary for Gabriel with the Judge. They had done the Gabriel Caruana Foundation, sorry. They had done royalties, for example, if an artist takes part. I don't know if people are aware or not, but for example, we offer our design and we'll also get compensated through royalties. So that way they're showing importance. Like, listen, we don't devalue you artists, we value you. You know what I mean? You're going to get what interests you, as in you're going to get a cut, and we're also going to promote a good cause. It was based on a belief, and that set the whole stage. Everything, we all came together because of a belief. I mean, Elise can further explain this.
The main principle of it was basically we're non-profit, and like our main aim is always to support artists whatever way. I mean, we're doing it with Spring. It's a program which is run entirely voluntary. We give the space, we give the support, whatever it is. It takes up a lot of time, but ultimately seeing everything come into place, seeing everyone collaborating with each other, seeing like artists of version 1.1 coming to help version 1.2 set up. So it's kind of this whole Martina here, I'm going to bring her in now, is very like she's seen it all happening basically. Just like latching on to this organization, institution, interrelationship, whatever, I think understanding does come into play. It's a big factor. There's also compromise. Both institutions and also organizations, obviously to varying degrees, have agendas, and these agendas are not easily broken through or maneuvered in, basically. And it's, you need to adapt to working with, you need to know what you're going into, basically working with an institution. If you're uncomfortable with working with a particular agenda or working around a particular agenda, it might become incredibly difficult. Whereas this might also happen in organizations who obviously have a mission, who have a scope, who are fighting for, or else what have a particular motive. Both of them mixed together, compromise, a lot of compromise, a lot of understanding, facilitating as well. When artists come into play, it becomes a whole different scenario. It's quite a complex structure to actually like explain in a, in a few words, I think.
Thank you for the effort. You've done a great job. So I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything to it, but while we do that, I am going to open up the floor. So whoever wants to say anything about this, please go ahead. There is a little conversation happening in the chat, so we can refer to that. But before we do that, if there's anything else you'd like to add about institutions and community, please be my guest.
Institutions and community. It's a bit different than institutions and organizations.
I group institutions.
I think when working with community and being a mediator between communities and institutions, it takes a lot, because you cannot, a community in its entirety, whatever is meant by the term community, which is very broad and varied, you get different perspectives. You get a group of people who are living their daily lives normally. So it's like you can't really impede on kind of a community which is doing their own business, basically. When these, for example, in community-based projects, there is the notion that working with communities and exposing facts about communities is simple and straightforward, and that everyone understands that certain agendas are met by these community members. It's not the case, because when you're working with a community, you need to allow them to basically, as my friend would say, roam, wander, and wonder. You cannot simply impose and say, listen, oh, I'm here to work with you. My agenda is that I want to create an artistic project, and you all have to abide by these different circumstances I am going to impose on you. That's a bit difficult and very rigorous. And sometimes, whether it's organizations or whether it's institutions, sometimes there is the lack of understanding between how a community operates and how an institution operates, and the merging of both. I think there is a lot to understand and a lot to be learned. I think it is kind of a type, especially in related to the visual arts or artistic practice in general. It's something that is not well well studied or well, not necessarily in an academic way, but like there aren't too many projects which fully and successfully try to understand what working in a community actually means, and like embracing the, rather than putting the community at the focus of the project, allowing the community to actually influence the project. So it needs to be seen vice versa. I can go on, so I think I'll stop.
I was going to, but I'm reading Jodie's post on the side, and I think that speaks to the uncomfortable spaces that I was speaking about earlier, the need to be open and the need to be courageous as well, and to really get out of that comfort zone, because I think that's where the real magic happens. I don't see anything wrong necessarily with conflict. Conflict can be productive as well. When everyone gets along, it can be a bit boring, not incredibly creative. You know, that doesn't mean that we should all be cruel to each other, but a little bit of discomfort isn't necessarily a bad thing. And in relation to community, I'm always a bit cautious. I'm a youth and community worker by profession, but a truly participatory approach means listening to everybody. And when it comes to community, often it's particular dominant voices that emerge representing everybody, or claiming to represent everybody. And so community can be exclusionary as well. And we see this in Malta all the time, not just in Malta, to everywhere. So I'm for being open and courageous and embracing the discomfort as part of a creative process, whether it's in academia or activism or really in the arts.
Thank you, everyone. I'd like to add something. It's been very hard to stay quiet on this on this topic. I've been going like this since. Anyway, I remember. I'd like to share this story with you. Elise, I think, remembers this very well. In the beginning, very beginning of ARTZ, I decided to group everyone in one room at Musa. You know, I got institution leaders, artists, gallerists. I decided, okay, this is the perfect way to go around this, you know, have them all in one room and pitch this great collaborative idea. And I remember I spent 2 hours, almost an hour and a half, speaking about this project, you know, full of energy. And I remember I stopped and no one said anything. No clap, nothing. I wasn't expecting an applause or something, but everyone felt so uncomfortable being together in that room because they were never together in one room. So, you know, I think collaboration needs time, and this trust and this building this trust and relationship, it happens, you know, it's a process. You listen to one another, you start connecting the dots. I mean, it's an entire process. And I think that day, that is the biggest lesson I've learned. And then I ended up meeting almost 60 people individually and listening to them and bringing them as members and, you know, just listening. But then by doing that, at the end, we still came all together, you know, even if it's virtually for now. So I really think that this building trust and listening to one another is really important. Other than that, obviously collaboration can come different ways. For me, from a business perspective, for example, it's really important to create and bridge these collaborations between the arts sector and other sectors and find a mutual interest. Because at the end of the day, what we want to bring to the arts sector cannot happen just within the arts. You know, we need to bridge to the public, to the people. We obviously need to become one day sustainable. So these partnerships and thinking outside the box and you know, brainstorming with other organizations and other institutions who might not be familiar to the arts. I mean, that can be very uncomfortable because you have no clue about what the other person would think, you know. So pushing yourself, even as an artist, pushing yourself to, you know, try something new. You can really grow personally, on a personal level, just by, you know, pushing yourself and making yourself in a spot where, you know, it's unknown. And I think once you've bridged that, then you start experiencing the beauty, let's say, and the impact of being more collaborative. And then it just becomes an addiction, I guess. But yes, building trust and, you know, making the first step. I think that is what I have to say for now.
Maria, that took great courage as well, bringing everybody together. I mean, you know, kudos to you. I would add time, you know, just nothing happens overnight. Everything needs its time as well. I mean, and what you did, you know, was one step in a process ultimately, and an ongoing process. I mean, even today, you know, I see all these new faces. These are all new relationships with new possibilities, all part of the same process that evolves over time.
There is a really interesting point in the chat. I don't mean to diverge somewhere else, but I am diverging now. Ritchie says, I saw other artists abroad getting together on Zoom once a week. They are getting a lot of benefits in this particular time where we are all homebound. They share ideas, techniques, opportunities. Do you think it could be possible with visual artists in Malta?
We will be doing actually this. We are working. I had the pleasure, just like Elise, to be invited to the Salzburg Global Forum 2 years ago. And there I met someone very interesting from America, and we'll be working together on creating these sharing groups, which we had the opportunity to experience back in Salzburg. Basically, we just get together and, you know, share our ideas, maybe our struggles at this time. So we will be creating this space. We should be launching it on the 28th March, if I'm not mistaken. And we might also send you a bottle of wine as well at home. That is part of the package, you know, just an open space. Obviously, it can be like an intimate space where, you know, the sessions are not recorded, so you can be free to discuss and open and be just yourself. I think a really important thing with inclusivity is knowing that you're not alone. So when you're listening to others and listening and relating to their struggles, you know, it's really important because it will make you feel part of the community and make you feel more inclusive, because sometimes we exclude ourselves. It's not because others don't include us, we push ourselves a bit. So I think being in a space where you can listen to one another and, you know, feel like you relate, both as an artist, both as an organization leader or gallerist or whatever. I think we share very similar pain points, let's call them. So sometimes it's really good to feel that you're not alone. So I think that we will try it out and see how it works. I mean, I won't take too much of their time, but we have tried other ways on how to create and start conversation. And some of them we had to shoot them down because everyone is afraid to speak up first. Like we had a section on ARTZ before we start in the very early stages where it was like a forum and everyone could ask questions and, you know, share experiences, and no one would speak, no one. So basically put it down. So it's a process, you know, and this is part of our process. I believe that also being within a physical space, I think it will make complete difference rather than being on camera. Sometimes I feel like I'm doing an interview on TV or something. So I think that will change the dynamic of it. So hopefully one day we'll be able to create that safe space as well. But yes.
We actually do this every month in our membership. We get together, and because we are all solo entrepreneurs, you know, like yourselves, I guess, you know, if you're an artist, you're working alone. So there is something to be said about that, Maria, for sure, and definitely pursue it, because we get people together and we just tell them, you know, like, what are you struggling with at the moment? What ideas do you need to bounce off with the group? You know, just to use that space to share what they're going through at the moment. And that's where trust is built. That's where you start connecting with people, you know, because you realize that we are all going through such similar struggles. And the beauty of it is that you start to offer advice to each other, right? And this is where the power of community comes in. You really feel like you belong to the group because everyone is out there to help you, you know, to share their advice, to share their contacts. And sometimes just verbalizing what you're going through is enough, you know, because you sort of hear yourself say it and then you sort of find out the solution as you say it. But sharing it in a space with a group, there's so much power in that. So I really do push you to do that because I found that it really helps.
What are the key tips to building a collaborative space? Excluding just like listening and being open and receptive, how can you create a truly collaborative space?
Well, a collaborative space. I think it becomes like a co-working space almost, like even these sessions that I mentioned, you know, having everyone in a room together, sharing their struggles. Then you start offering each other advice and then post-session, you start connecting the dots. So for example, you'd call this one because you need their legal advice, or that one because she's skilled at digital marketing and you need help with that, you know, and it just becomes like a co-working space, I think, and then it becomes collaborative.
I definitely agree with that. That's a really good point. Does anyone else from the group want to share anything else? That's a good question, Maria. How do you suggest to use ARTZ platform to collaborate?
Well, first of all, start endorsing each other. We are working on a strategy on how to push you to endorse each other, because I think collaboration, you know, you have to give. You have to give and give. I think that is very important, that you reach out first, even with a like, with an endorsement, with a comment, just start building the relationship, right? I think that is very important, and it can be through Facebook, through ARTZ, it can be through anything. I mean, ARTZ, what the collaborative part is, okay, we're bringing everyone together, but what we're doing is that we are collaborating with the galleries and other initiatives to bring those collaborations to you. But then it's up to you, you know. I don't want to pitch ARTZ right now because this is really about you. So just put yourself out there and start by, you know, endorsing someone, you know, ask questions, and that's how you start a collaboration with someone else. I mean, even I love seeing like Zac had a really nice project with Jana Frost, I believe it was. I mean, that's amazing, you know, you're bringing your work and hers and you're creating something, you know, really different and fresh, let's say. And these collaborations within the art scene, especially with artists, apart from, you know, creating something really interesting, you have to look at it also strategically, right? Because you have your audience, let's say your friends, and then the other person has his or her audience and her friends, and then her friends will get to know about your work. So if you look at it from a, you know, growth perspective as well, you're reaching a new audience as well. So, and apart from that, in the art world, something which I have learned over and over again, credibility is very important. So this is another step in your artistic career or path, you know, to gain that credibility. And that credibility comes over time with the people you exhibit with, the people you collaborate with, and the people and within the community, the whole community. So it comes in different ways. So just put yourself out there and just reach out, and don't be afraid or shy. And if you need, for example, for me, what was really useful is having that person which connected me to someone else when I was too hesitant or I wasn't credible enough for that person to work with me. So if you find that person, it can be me, it can be someone else, that just sends an email out and connects you to someone you would like to collaborate with, then use it. I mean, for me, it has really helped me out, for sure, in many ways. Even when I had the Niala 5 galleries, I mean, I would have never arrived to that step if I wasn't connected to someone else. So just, you know, there are different ways. If you are too hesitant to do it, or maybe you don't feel that you're up for it, find someone that can help you, you know, get connected.
If I may chime in, guys, I'd also like to add, if it's not, it doesn't need to just be collaboration. Even the fact of just being, because we spoke about building trust. The first thing that comes before trust is attention. And to get attention, if let's say you're an artist and you want to start out and gain a bit of attention, you have to give a lot. And collaboration is a higher form of giving. It's a shared giving, but it can easily start off by, I don't know, I do this a lot, like suggesting ideas or being a super connector, like I met, for example, Sarah, and I know that she loves empowering women, and I see that I have a friend of mine who's a girl and she has this idea, and I say, speak to Sarah. For example, these small things really make a big difference. And on the same note, Jana Frost, we became super close. Me and Diana, how you say, are super tight, like we're cool. As in, that's the beauty of collaboration. You actually become friends, you know? Like I trust her, she trusts me, we joke around. It's a really nice experience. And it's even nicer that we're expressing ourselves through through our skills.
I mean, really what I hear a lot of is letting go of pride and ego, as you mentioned before, and really heralding the human need to connect and overcoming the terror of judgment, which collaboration would ultimately help us do as well. Is there anything else anyone wants to add to this before we start wrapping up, because time is pressing? Okay, I did a 3-second countdown and there's been nothing. Okay, so I want to wrap this up with one question. How has the collaborative approach helped you in your development, both in your career and both in your sense of self as well? Anyone? Elise, do you want to go first?
I think with regards to the personal, it has uncovered a lot of things I really did not know about myself, because like getting to collaborate with different individuals, different working ethics, different characters, it just continuously gives. And you're always, if you're a person who's inquisitive and you're always asking how and trying to understand, it becomes kind of this, all right, this is interesting, this is a nice approach. On a collaborative level, in terms of like working and projects and the art side of it, I can't really work alone anymore. I hate working alone, I want to share. So yes, that basically sums it up. I want to make people laugh as well. The end.
I think for me, collaboration has helped build up my community to what it is today. As Zac said, it's all about building relationships, and you know, you start from one event, you meet, I don't know, 30 people at the event, and then someone that attended the event will take photographs at the next event, will lead a workshop at the event after. You know, it's all about fostering connections, nurturing them, involving them at different steps of the way. Yeah, so I would say collaboration has helped me build the community, and then community has helped me foster the collaboration. It's a bit of a, and then personally, as Elise said, I mean, you learn so much about yourself, you know, working with different people, and it's so much fun. It's, as Zac said, you make new friends, you explore different creative outlets together. Yeah, I'm all for collaborating and community.
Well, I wouldn't be the person that I am or where I am today without the relationships and the communities that I work with. And that is without a doubt. If I think about, I've been working with the same NGOs, some of them for 17 years. I mean, we're all small organizations, very, very limited resources. We play to each other's strengths. I think at the beginning we came together united on a cause, and that's what brought us together. It's made me aware of my strengths and my weaknesses, what I do well and what I really do badly, but that's okay because other people can do what I do badly. But at some point as well, the relationships became an end in their own right and not just a means to an end, and have been incredibly important in terms of support. And carrying me personally through the rough patches as well. So, yeah, so friendships are about being human. They're an important resource. I loved what you were all saying about sharing. Those relationships, they're not something to keep to yourself. They're something to share with others. Probably in Malta, I'd say the most important resource. It really matters. It really, really matters. You can do nothing on your own. So yeah, I wouldn't be anywhere without my friends and without my support system and the relationships.
I would say collaboration, what it has taught me is the problem with being a creative is sometimes we're all over the place, and it's so amazing to realize is that, like, listen, you need to have a box, you need to have limitations, because once you have that box, that's when you can think outside of it. So that is like one of the best things I've learned about collaborating. A second part that I've learned is that on our own as artists, as business people, we have a voice, but on our own we can't do anything. We have no one to talk to, we have no one to spread the voice. If it doesn't resonate with other people, nothing will happen. And so collaboration is where things start, as in big movements and all these things. It can lead to inspiration to other people and get them to do something.
I mean, for me, it has changed me completely. It has changed the way I think, the way, I mean, I just really like the relationships, you know, this, I mean, sense of community at the end of the day, you know, and being creative on how to come up with different collaborations. I mean, I think that is really fulfilling for me, and seeing something, you know, from nothing become something. And I think that has really changed everything I do. Before, when I had the galleries, everything felt so competitive, and I hated that environment. And we were like, as Elise said, we're few spaces. We have the same audience, and we are competing on who's going to go to whose exhibition. And I just didn't get it. I mean, because at the end of the day, if one of us fails, it's going to hit our entire ecosystem, which is already very fragile. So that's why I created ARTZ, actually. So yes, I mean, for me, collaboration, I know I'm not the speaker today, but since you asked me to add something, it's just a way of life. I think it's a way of life in everything, in every single thing. From relationships to business to community, social change, everything. I mean, it's a way of life for me today.
So I want to wrap this up by saying something about collaboration, because I'm just starting to do collaborative things, and it's taught me to let go of a lot of things. It's taught me to let go of a lot of judgment and really understand that we are stronger when we work together. And it also makes you face a lot of ugly things about yourself, or at least just things that you didn't really want to face about yourself. And it helps you rise through that. So with that in mind, thank you. Thank you for this space, guys. You've all been great. Does anyone else want to say something else about this before we wrap up for good? No, the 3 seconds is over. That's just, I didn't count this time. I just looked at Elise's face where it's like, yeah, she counted for me. So thanks, Mum. So thank you. It's been lovely. It's been absolutely fantastic. And I have an immense amount of respect for all of you. And thank you for joining us and making the space what it's been. So yeah, have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you, everyone who joined.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.